again, pulls it back. Marta again, another time. The shot up on put it in!
Press stopping, shooting a curling ball. Kristen Press, and it's another early goal.
It's still loose in front of the net. Flicks it back. A goal for Tobin Heath.
You're listening to the Her Football Hub podcast, covering the world of women's football.
Welcome back to the Her Football Hub Stateside podcast. While the world around us has changed drastically during this last month, there's one thing that remains the same. The podcasting show must go on. Isn't that right, Kara?
That's right, Taylor. This virus has taken its toll not only on our regular activities, but it's not open season just yet. We all want football to come back, and we must do our part. Now, let's take a look at the games that took place over the weekend.
We were originally going to be treated to some intriguing fixtures this past weekend. This included OL Reign versus Washington Spirit, North Carolina Courage versus Chicago Red Stars, Portland Thorns versus Utah Royals, and Orlando Pride versus Sky Blue.
Yep, so we had a lot of good games that was going to be lining up this weekend. But some good news that happened was before the virus hit, the NWSL teams were able to have at least one preseason training or practice that happened before all this did take place. There were a couple of club players that weren't able to participate due to international duties or actually playing in the W League down in Australia.
That's right. And there's actually a lot of good action going down W League because right before this all happened, we did have that final. There was a good deal of players involved in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of them are actually going to be coming from these 8 teams that were going to be happening. So there were players that were playing, so they were able to get that last little bit in. But yeah, it was a great game. If those that were able to watch those matches before the virus took its toll across the world.
So today we'll break down the first 2 games that were going to take place this last weekend, which is the OL Reign versus Washington Spirit and the North Carolina Courage versus the Chicago Red Stars.
That's right. OL Reign. Who's that?
Yeah, I have no idea.
It's a new name. But you know what? It's the same threat though. So Seattle Reign, they were in our previous podcast, if you had listened, we had said they were taking over by Olympique Lyonnais, so now it is OL Reign, and they were getting ready to take on the Spirit, and that was going to be an anticipated match coming into opening weekend.
Right, and Washington Spirit, they didn't have a greatest season last season, but they were kind of like in the middle of the bunch. They had their ups and downs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and recapping from the last meeting that they had with Reign was a 2-2 draw, but it was going to be a must-win for both of these teams, just so how the table was going to plan out. And it kind of didn't really happen since it was a draw. So it was interesting, but the game itself was definitely anticipating a big matchup. And the game itself was great to watch.
Yeah, and so now with a new season on the horizon, possibly, I would picture that Reign would be on top in this matchup because the Washington Spirit, they haven't always been the strongest as of recently, at least.
Right, yeah. So you got a new coach, you got the new name, everything is changing, but OL Reign is taking it by stride and running hard at it.
For the Spirit in general, they are coming off of a mid-table season, but they still have returning players that I think could create some damage too. And they do have some new players too that came in. So I think it would be interesting, but I feel like they're still kind of building to something. Whereas the Reign, while they did change so much image-wise, they are still kind of have that backbone.
Mm-hmm. Right. And Rose Lavelle and Andy Sullivan, who also played a big factor for the Spirit, they're still on the team. So I'm anticipating them pushing forward and just helping the team climb back up that table with a couple of players that have been transferred out from the Spirit. So I think that they'll be looking forward to regaining some confidence, but also just getting more points on that table.
Yeah, and with the Spirit, they actually lost a great quality of players. So I feel like with those players gone, they're going to have this void to fill. And this next season really will be one where they're kind of transitioning. I know we talk about that word transitioning so much, and I just feel like this is their season to be doing that.
Right, yeah.
They got rid of Amy Harrison, Chloe Lagarzo, Mallory Pugh.
Mm-hmm.
They're all gone. So
right.
It's going to be a lot for them to transition with.
Right, yeah. And I do know that from the college draft picks that took place, they did sign several good young players. I'm not sure how fast they would be able to get on as starting 11, but I think they'll be utilizing them as well moving forward since they did lose some high quality players.
Yeah, like to name a few, they do have Natalie Jacobs and Ashley Sanchez.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Ashley Sanchez, she could be one that takes a place of Mallory Pugh. So maybe they were kind of counting on that to happen. And then for Mallory Pugh, they were able to get some good draft picks, which then in turn they got Ashley Sanchez for. So
Right.
I think it's a like for like swap right there. And so we'll see if that pays off, really.
Yeah, that's true. And also on the other side of the coin, OL Reign, they did also sign a lot of young players too. And their new coach was talking about how they wanted to utilize a lot of those players. Even their CEO was talking about how that would further their program, not only just for this season, but also for beyond. So definitely probably keep your eyes open for those players since OL Reign, they were able to, I think they had a couple more practices that had seen transpired for this quote unquote preseason. So they were really hitting it hard. So I'd assume that they would be talking about how to use those players effectively.
Neither team completed any sort of preseason games, but they did certainly have a little bit of training in there beforehand.
Right, yeah. A couple of practices, I mean, that's better than nothing because I know a couple of players did not even get to meet a new coach or see any of the new players at all just because of those international duties or just en route to those clubs from doing different and various tournaments. So it's going to be definitely interesting when this does kick back up, but rest assured, we're going to be going swinging when this is lifted for the coronavirus.
If this fixture did go through, what would you have expected the scoreline to be?
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with you. I think Reign would come out on top. I'm not sure if it will be as close as that last meeting that they had, that 2-2 draw, but I would definitely think probably like a 3-1 or maybe a 2-0 for the Reign to win.
Yeah, I was thinking along the lines of a 2-1 win for Reign as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it would be good because the first games, you always are trying to figure out, okay, what's the best tactics, the best formations to use, and just getting those players accustomed to that type of play, especially if you do have a lot of transitions going in and out with those transfers and even coaching staff as well. So I think the first game, all of these fixtures would just be like, okay, there's going to be some bumps here and there, but I mean, I still think the Reign would be coming out on top.
Really, in the beginning, you always see kind of strange results. Maybe teams that would go on to be at the bottom of the table actually have good success in the early part of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about kind of ironing out those wrinkles. And usually by like June or July, whatever team is really going to power through it, that's when you start to see them come through.
Right, yeah.
So I think, like you said, this is kind of when they kind of start to see a shell of what they will become, but it's not quite there yet.
Right, exactly. And a couple of players to kind of keep a note on, at least for the Reign side, Jess Fishlock can actually play now. So that'll be exciting to see her back on the pitch. And then also PSG, they did do that transfer from PSG was going to be Shirley Cruz. And I think that she'll be getting some playing time as well.
Yeah, so that'd be good for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And there's always those players on the Spirit to watch, like we had mentioned, Roosevelt, and also those newer players that Taylor had said. And Sanchez, that's going to be somebody that's probably going to replace Mallory Pugh. But again, like we always have, Audrey Bledsoe and also Andy Sullivan as well.
Those are two that are always mainstays on that squad.
Right, yep.
So we'll move along to the next match, which was the North Carolina Courage versus Chicago Red Stars.
That's right. This is the rematch of the championship.
Yeah.
I was so excited when I had seen this was going to be their first fixture. I was like, ooh, we starting to taste that revenge. Super sweet.
You don't need revenge if you were the winner.
That's right. But both teams involved are like, okay, this is going to be high pressing and just the football in general. Like you already know from the gate, it's going to be intense. So, and that's what I think fans, not only for those two teams, but across the NWSL network, I guess you can say, were really anticipating of just seeing this clash again.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And with a lot of changes that have happened, more so for Chicago Red Stars, there's the big one with Sam Kerr not on the team anymore. But I think the same thing I talked about in the last match there was the backbone, and I think both teams still kept their backbones intact. So it really could go anywhere with this.
Yeah, exactly. Especially since Kerr was such a heavy powerhouse up top. I think we had talked about this as well on how that would shape the Stars' offense, or if it would break them, depending on how everything would play out, especially with the different draft picks they had gotten and or transfers. So I think leading into this, I'm going to go ahead and say Ohai, I think, would start, like, to be honest. Like, she was explosive for the dash, and I think they could definitely utilize her up top, and it would just be a great pairing with Savannah McCaskill as well on the side. So I think it would be interesting if they were to play this game, how it would go. But those are the two that I think would definitely be a good pairing.
Yeah, and I think with both teams, they have really solid coaches too behind each side. So I think that is also going to be another factor too, with both coaches staying on board. Rory Dames for Chicago Red Stars and Paul Riley for the North Carolina Courage. Both of them will see this as an opportunity for their teams to grow, not necessarily going out all guns a-blazing. This isn't a final again, so this could kind of operate a little differently than what we saw them in their last game together.
Right.
But I think you'll see a lot of tweaking and different experiments being utilized early on like this.
And they did play in the championship where it was 4-0 with Chicago losing. But the other match that they had was going to be a 2-1 victory where the Courage just barely won over that. So I think if this one was to play, I think it would still be close. I don't think it would be a runaway game. I think it would probably just be like maybe 2 goals. So 2-0 is what I would anticipate. Or maybe even something like a 2-1 victory.
For the Courage?
Yeah, just because of the different players that they have, that's at least for the Courage side that they have kept. They didn't really lose too many people with the draft, but still, like, they have a lot of solid people up top and just in that back that will definitely be offensively and defensively strong. And with the different tactics that they have, like, I think they would come out on top still.
Yeah, I can see that happening. I personally think there would be maybe a 1-1 draw. Early on in the season, you don't have all the kinks worked out, but I think Chicago, they have a very strong defensive unit. And if they really tighten that up, they could pull out a victory even. But really with the attacking forces kind of adjusted and changed, I don't picture them winning. But I think a 1-1 draw would be more suitable.
Yeah, I do think it will be closer than what we had seen, obviously, in that championship match. But it definitely would have to just wait and see. But I do think it will still be that high press that we had been seeing previous seasons just from these two teams and just the formations that they have used prior as well.
Yeah, because with Chicago, you still have the kind of the engines of the team. Like Sam Kerr, she wasn't the engine. She wasn't what made the team click entirely. She was the end product. So I think with Julie Ertz and Yuki Nagasato,
right,
those are the players that keep the Chicago team moving forward and keeping them with possession and all that.
Right, yeah, I totally agree, definitely.
So those were the first 2 games of what would have been the opening weekend of the NWSL here in mid-April. But for the other 2, we'll come back to you with another episode in a few days' time and what we think would happen when it comes to Portland Thorns versus Utah Royals and the Orlando Pride versus Sky Blue FC.
To be continued.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
From Taylor in Wisconsin.
And Kara from Tennessee.
We'll catch you on the Stateside.
You can tell we're out of practice.
Wait, do you want to redo that?